Tell me a little bit about Tristan Wirfs. We've heard phenomenal athletes, some crazy stories. What jumps out when I say Tristan Wirfs, as a guy who's been a beat reporter covering him, what sticks out in your mind? What is the thing that jumps out about this guy?
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. I think the first thing that really steps out is reliability. You look at this guy who was, an Army All American coming out of high school, had a lot of expectations, jumps right in, and I believe becomes the first true freshman to start at either offensive tackle positions in the Kirk Ferentz era, which goes back to 1999. So that's a pretty good chunk of time. So he comes in and with a lot of high school hype, jumps right in the starting lineup and takes off from there. And now, unsurprisingly, has a lot of hype going in the draft. So when you look at this guy, there's certainly no character risks. There's no really any sort of risks, other than just kind of the general way things go in the NFL with high picks sometimes. So if you're looking for a guy who can come in and probably contribute right away or pretty close to right away, on top of having kind of all the other intangibles that you want. I think reliability and stability are the biggest things when you look at what Tristan Wirfs has done in his career and what he could bring to the Browns.
You hear all the stories about what kind of crazy athlete he is. Tell us some of the things, and you mentioned he came in very highly hyped as, he's an all-American type wrestler. Some of the things that
Mm-hmm.
he did with track and field as a discus thrower. Is this guy really that good of an athlete?
For sure, and I'm not sure where the pre combine assessments came from that he wasn't, because that's been as big of a consistent with him as anything. I remember the first article I wrote with him was on his signing day after he had just come back from the Army All American game, and the picture that I used was him standing on his hands, probably still 300 pounds at that point. So, and then there was another video that circulated of him. Ju- uh, they were all the guys were at Kirk Ferentz's house, and he stands flat footed in the pool and jumps up to the side of the pool. So that's probably at least a 5-6 foot standing jump. So and then obviously you look at all the numbers that he set at the combine and whatnot. So for a big guy, for a guy who you know weighs a lot, obviously he moves really well, and that probably comes from some of that multi-sport background. This was a guy who had to drop 30 pounds, I believe, his senior year of wrestling to be able to compete to get, in his weight class, and goes out and wins a state title. Comes back at the Drake Relays, which is a big track meet here, national track meet, and, wins the discus and the shot put. And then comes back at the state tournament and does the same thing. So there's no downplaying the athletic side of him. There's no downplaying the kind of the freak of nature, jaw dropping side of him. That all is very real and very prominent as he kind of gets evaluated as a prospect for sure.
You've known him for a while. You mentioned you did a story with him on signing day. What type of kid is he, and how have you seen him kind of grow in his 4 years at Iowa, or his time at Iowa?
Right. Yeah, I think that's right up there with probably the biggest positive looking at this guy. You obviously have a top 10 pick. It's a pretty big investment. You want to do your due diligence and dig into guys' personalities and upbringings and stuff like that. And I imagine these GMs digging into Tristan Wirfs' background have not found many negative things. This is a guy who grew up in a small town, small, pretty traditional Iowa town in Mount Vernon. Had a lot of community support there, and his smile, I guess, and his just bubbly personality really resonates throughout the whole community, even as he's kind of accelerated to these lofty heights. So you haven't seen anything change with him. You haven't seen, kind of the whole thing, get absorbed in it and just walk around like he was the best thing on earth. You haven't seen any of that, and I wouldn't expect any of that to change just because that's his natural personality. It's nothing forced. It's nothing that's takes a lot of effort to come out of. He's just kind of a natural, fun, you know, good guy to interview and good guy to be around. And even obviously he was made available a lot throughout his career here, and we talked to him quite a bit. And every single interview seemed like he I don't want to say thoroughly enjoyed it because I don't know how much those guys thoroughly enjoy talking to media, but every time we talked to him, it was the same guy, the same attitude, the same kind of, like I said, bubbly personality that you don't always see in football players, especially big time prospects as well.